No, this facility's mine, mine.
It's mine. Go back.
Oh shit, it's the cops!
No
Everyone scatter! Troops, I saw a bear here. 3, Today, 2, we'll be taking a look at Update 51 for Foxhole. This update brings some quality of life changes to builders as well as facility producers, and completely reworks the fire mechanics introduced in Update 51. And if this is all new to you, you're probably best off reviewing Update 50 first. To kick things off, the Colonials get a new tripod weapon in the form of the Valkyria GD1. This is a tripod-mounted grenade launcher, capable of firing different grenades, such as tremola, anti-structure grenades, gas grenades, and smoke grenades. And being a tripod weapon, it can also be mounted on vehicles like half-tracks. Some quality of life features. Most of these features relate to logistics and builders. In no particular order, the BMS Foreman Stacker visuals have been updated to be more distinct from the world stationary cranes. Pressing V by default to assemble large items from material pallets can be done now, as well as other containers like BMS line runners and bunker storage room. Assembly stations and the Field Modification Center only consume power when they are producing something. Efficient. The Field Modification Center now communicates the maximum stockpile capacity as well. All facility buildings within a power network can be reserved with one button click, similar to how mass reserving bunker islands work. Item tooltips now displayed where items are produced and by what faction. There were some client-side changes that are a little harder to explain, but essentially these will make it so that turret rotation and vehicle movement is now much smoother, so you don't see vehicles jostling about, or so that vehicles are less likely to be thrown off of a barge, for example. Hovering the cursor over an enemy base now shows the prompt Intel unavailable. Hovering the cursor over a resource field with stationary harvesters nearby now show a division between the resource field itself and how many resources have been collected by the harvesters. Oil fields now display a custom interaction message saying that the field has unlimited resources when you activate it. Train bridges are now destructible. It's worth noting that infantry cannot cross these destroyed bridges. For power lines, their build ghosts now have physics and overall feel smoother. As well, power lines now provide different failure messages depending on what prevented the line from being constructed in the first place. For facilities, a power switch has been added. This is a new structure that allows you to manually disable portions of power circuits in your facility. So instead of having to turn everything off or rearrange all your power lines, just flip the switch. There's also a new upgrade for pipes, which is insulated pipes. With the addition of an extra pipe piece, an insulation material can be put over a pipe to keep it from freezing during harsh weather conditions. Pipe interaction ranges have been increased to allow for easier interactions with them, and as well, pipe contents are now updated in real time as opposed to having to reopen the UI every time you want to check on it. There's a new ammo factory modification in the form of the Tripod Factory, which specializes in producing tripods and tripod-based weaponry. More on a new one in a second. In the bottom left-hand corner, modified facility buildings now show what modification, in parentheses, they have. Maintenance tunnels now also show how many garrison supplies they consume per hour. Operators of the BMS rail trucks can now left-click to submit resources to buildings. The catwalk structures now have an owning faction, applying the same friendly fire rules as other facility buildings. Reserved facility buildings can no longer be retooled to make a different product by a non-squad member. Reserved facility buildings can also no longer be turned on or off by non-squad members. The disconnect all button can no longer be pressed by non-squad members, as long as the facilities are reserved. Power lines cannot be added to a reserved power pole by non-squad members. Vehicles must now be correctly rotated on the large assembly station to park, but the large assembly station parking area has been increased. Trench connectors can now be built under both world tracks and player-made tracks, as well as provisional roads. A damage alert is shown, and the structures being damaged turn orange on map intelligence when taking damage from fire, similar to other damage types. Facility building UI now shows power consumed or power produced measurements. World resource mines now prevent construction of buildings over the container interaction points so that they don't block trucks. World Resource Mine vehicle interaction areas have increased so that small gauge rail trains are better able to interact with mines on the backside of them. Facility buildings no longer drop large items when destroyed by weapon damage. The BMS scrap hauler can once again be reserved after construction. Structures have been reordered in all of the build menus so that structures like pillboxes are next to each other, factories are next to each other, cranes are next to each other. It just makes more sense. Weapons with multiple ammo types have been unified to show currently loaded ammo types as the text. Open-top vehicles now prevent crew members from freezing during snowstorms. Trains are now able to ram structures that are in their way. While we're on the subject of trains, there's a new train car piece being added. This is the BMS Roadhouse. It's a caboose. Both factions can equip trains with a caboose car. What these do is they allow rail crews to maintain rail tracks more efficiently by supplying the caboose with garrison supplies or construction materials. And driving over rail tracks with these, the caboose will automatically repair any pieces of rail that it passes over. So that way, as you use rail tracks more, they will be maintained as long as you have a caboose on them, and you don't need to maintain them manually by hand. Vehicles. For the Wardens, the O'Brien, the 190 Knave. It's an armored car, and it comes equipped with dual Tremola grenade launcher. Keep in mind that this will be the basis for Warden heavy armored cars going forward, meaning that the Warden O'Brien, the 101 Freeman, the heavy armored car with a 40mm cannon on it, will be in this class of vehicle and an upgrade from the Knave. The Wardens are also getting a new battle tank in the form of the Flood Juggernaut Mark 7. The Flood Juggernaut brings with it heavier armor for the vehicle overall, and replaces the front-facing machine gun with a front-facing heavy flamethrower, being able to tackle armor and buildings alike. Not to be outdone, the Colonials respond with the Lance 25 Hasta. This is a battle tank, though I suppose a more apt description would be a battle tank destroyer. Its turret has been replaced with a fixed front-facing 94.5mm cannon. This thing is a heavy beast, and it sure looks the part. Next up, we've got fire engines for both factions. These are produced at the Light Vehicle Assembly Station in facilities. The Wardens come in with the Dune Dowsing Engine 3R, and the Colonials cool it with the R12B Salva Flame Truck. Both function identically. They're fire trucks based off the ambulance chassis. They've got 3 seats: a driver, passenger, and hoser. The driver and the passenger are pretty self-explanatory, but the hoser uses the stored water inside the tank to fire at medium range to put out flames, and they are very effective at doing so. Speaking of flames, it's actually probably a good time to jump into the rearrangement of flame mechanics. On to the flames. Fire mechanics have been completely reworked. Now, there's a lot of technical details on what exactly any of this means. The devs had some good slides on their dev stream discussing this. You can find a link to that dev stream below this video. However, I'm gonna focus on talking about what you, the troops, will actually be seeing on the battlefield as it relates to fire. Starting off with ignition. Fire now, being consistent about a source of flame, is now favored over just random chances of starting fires. Things like flamethrowers that can consistently put a flame on this building or bunker or trench system is far more likely to start a fire than things like incendiary rockets. You can still start fires with incendiary rockets, but you're more likely to if you target the same structure in a mass volley rather than single shots. Fires will also now always start at the lowest level. This is kind of a small, smoldering with a few embers kind of fire. Of course, that being said, if you keep putting burning propellant onto a structure consistently, it will upgrade the fire much faster. That's another thing, actually. Even the lowest level of fire might even just extinguish itself after a few minutes. But if you consistently apply a heat source to a structure and upgrade that fire, it will start to burn on its own merit. Another nice touch is that buildings in flames will now generate a lot of smoke and also have an associated sound effect with it. All buildings that are on fire will take a base level of fire damage over time. The quality or the higher the tier of any given structure is, the less additional damage it will take over time. So concrete can still burn, you are still applying a liquid fuel to it, however, it will take far less damage than wooden structures or lower tiered structures. Now for things that have been set on fire, it's worth noting that smoke will blow in the wind's direction, so you'll get an indicator of which way the flames are likely to spread. Soldiers that get caught on fire will have slightly longer to find a way to save themselves or be saved by a comrade. Oh, and map intel now also shows burning structures as being under attack and will turn orange, just like structures that are being fired upon by enemy soldiers. Now, in terms of extinguishing fires, the basic fire buckets now carry 2 splashes of water with them every time you fill them up from a well or from another water source. But just like with flamethrowers, consistency is king, so fire trucks will be far more efficient at putting out fires with their water cannons. And in case you're wondering if you are in fact hitting the flames and doing anything with your buckets or your water cannons, there are now steam sound effects and also sound and visual effects for when you hit a fire with a water source. A tip for all you arsonists out there, larger flames and more intense flames are the way to go. Instead of starting a bunch of smaller fires, focus on starting one big fire. It'll do more damage to the structure, it's more likely to spread, and it'll be harder to put out. But for everyone trying to extinguish flames, you will have overall more chances to put out flames, and you'll have more feedback on how effective you are at putting them out. This is one of those, it feels better than me having to explain it. It'll make sense, hopefully, or you'll be on fire. And there were some balance changes as well in this update. Let's start with the flame ones. The T14 Vesta tankette range has increased from 10 to 15, that would be the flamethrower tankette. The O'Brien V130 Wildjack range has been increased from 10 to 15 meters as well. Again, that is the flame armored car. The H19 Vulcan range has been increased from 15 to 18 meters, that is the flame light tank. The Noble Firebrand Mark 17 has had its range increased from 15 to 18, but also have had its ammo capacity increased from 100 to 150. And this is for all flamethrowers. Flamethrower splash size has increased across the board by 50%, so you're more likely to set someone alight even if you're just splashing the ground right next to them. Ladder bunker modification cost has changed from 1 metal beam back to 20 basic materials. BMS Overseer Skyhauler has had its retracting and extending speed for the arm, both with and without shippables, increased, and the pulley speed has been increased. The BMS Class 2 Mobile Auto Crane, BMS Overseer Skyhauler, and BMS Foreman Stacker have had their ability to pull bonuses unified. The Dune Leatherback 2A disable percentage has changed from 65 down to 50%. The R17 Retarius Skirmisher disabled percent has changed from 81 down to 65%. The Dune Responder 3E and R12 Salus Ambulance off-road movement speed has been reduced. The Gallagher Thornfall Mark 6 range has been increased from 20 to 30 meters. I'm also assured that it won't shoot itself in the back of the head anymore.
I'm assured of this.
The Flood Mark 1 MG turret rotation angle has been greatly increased. The 50-500 Thunderbolt cannon has had its health increased by 33%, and as well as repair costs has decreased from 150 down to 100. The Gunner's breastplate encumbrance percentage has decreased from 60 down to 45%, and the Valian flak vest encumbrance percent has decreased from 45 down to 35%, as well as increased its backpack slots from 3 to 4. 300mm production speed increased from 60 to 120 seconds. The 86K-C Ranceur assembly material 3 cost increased from 30 up to 45. The Noble Firebrand Mark 17 assembly material decreased from 10 down to 0, but its assembly material 2 has increased from 0 to 10. The Balfour Wolfhound 40mm Armats cost decreased from 30 to 20. And the 945G Stygian Bolt shield has been lowered to block shots from splashing under the gun. The demolish time of tracks and small gauge tracks has increased to 6 hours. Demolish time of foundation has increased to 144 hours. And emplacements now communicate their special rules in their descriptions. There were some map changes with this update. A lot of these revolve around the same thing, so I'll just hit the bullet points on these ones. There were several train bridges changed across the world, including in Basin Cyanach, Drowned Vale, The Fingers, Fisherman's Row, Lockmore, Marban Hollow, and Shackled Chasm. The second type of change for maps comes in the form of resource fields being moved away from the borders so that they're not in the rapid decay zone. This has occurred in Akrithia, Ashfields, Baranak Coast, Godscroft, Calakai, and Orebreaker Isles. The last changes were that ponds of water and bog mud to the west of the baths in Drowned Vale have been adjusted to allow for better track placement, and in Red River, trees to the east of Cannon Smoke and along the road following the river south of Fragment Knolls has been removed to allow for easier track placement. There were some bug fixes along with this update, but I'll save that for the patch notes down below. That does it for this update. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you saw in this video, like, share, and subscribe. It does help the channel out. So, what was your favorite part of this update? Do you think the changes to fire mechanics will make flame weapons more usable, as well as reduce the burden of having to put them out? Or do you think this doesn't go quite far enough? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, good luck, keep your heads down, and stay in your foxholes. Bear out.
Help me.
You can live longer though.
Yeah.